So, so you're looking at the subtextual values of the material. Why is subtext and then underneath? Why is that so important? Why?
Yeah.
Go back.
Okay. First of all, talking about for directors, it's important. I mean, it's helpful in talking to actors because that's how actors look at characters. Actors look at the subtext, or they should be. Actors should be looking at the subtext choices for their characters instead of thinking about how they look or how they're supposed to sound. So it's helpful for understanding what actors are going through, and if you want to have a meaningful communication with them, if you talk about the emotional history of the character, and the intention or the objectives of the character. Those are all subtext tools, and it's helpful for for communication. So that's one reason. But there's really another really important reason why directors should pay attention to the subtext, and it's so that the directors can figure out for themselves what your script is about. That's the most important thing for a director to understand, is what is the movie about, and what is each scene about. And another way of talking about that is or at least the terminology that I use, is an emotional event. What's the emotional event of a scene? Not just the plot event, not just how, and not just how the lines are supposed to look or sound, but what's the emotional event? How does this relationship change? To think of the scene as a relationship that is different at the end than it was at the beginning. And so to orient yourselves, for the directors to orient themselves into thinking about emotional event, it will be such a help for you in all ways, not just in terms of talking to the actors. Of course, it will be a help in being able to tell if the acting is good or not, if an emotional event takes place. If the actors are affecting each other, but not just for the actors. I think it's a help to the directors for their visuals as well, and for production design, and for every decision. I don't know if you guys also read Sidney Lumet's book, Making Movies. It's a wonderful book, and he hammers that home. The one thing that a director has to know is, what is your movie about? And this needs to be something that's not just what the movie says it's about necessarily. I can give you an example. This is one of my favorite examples. The movie. This is already an old example, though. Forrest Gump. Are you guys familiar with Forrest Gump? Okay. Anyway, Forrest Gump is a movie which sort of famously states its theme, right? It states it, I think, at least two or three different times. Life is like a box of chocolates, right? That's stated at the beginning of the movie, and it's stated at the end of the movie, and in narration, voiceover narration, and it's stated maybe during the middle of it maybe a couple more times. Life is like a box of chocolates. That is, the stated, that's what the movie says. That's what the script says the movie is about, right? Does that make sense? But I saw an interview, or read an interview with Robert Zemeckis, the director, some years ago, where he was talking to the interviewer, and the interviewer was trying to get him to talk about the special effects in Forrest Gump, which, of course, at the time were state of the art, and of course they no longer are. But anyway, that was of interest to people at the time, and Robert Zemeckis got irritated, and he said, I don't want to talk about the special effects. He said, if people think that this movie is about special effects, then I have totally failed. This movie is about grieving. And when I read that, it stopped me in my tracks, because I always knew that movies weren't supposed to be about special effects, but I'd never thought of Forrest Gump as a movie about grieving. So I thought, wow, this is important. This is odd. And I went back and thought about it. And everything, and it's true. The movie is about grieving. Everything that happens is loss. Forrest loses his father. He loses his girlfriend. He loses his best friend. He almost loses his other best friend. He loses his mother. He finds his girlfriend and loses her again. He almost loses his son. And so it's loss, 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 over and over again. And that the director understood that is what I believe made it possible for him to make a good movie about life is like a box of chocolates. If he had set out to make a movie about life is like a box of chocolates, I don't think it would have succeeded in any meaningful way. I don't think it would be a movie that, film students today still have probably, would have seen. That it would have been superficial. And it was because he looked underneath the words of the, the words of the literal words of the script. He took instead of looking at what literally the script tells us it's about and looked at clues, the events of the script are clues. The death after death after death, they're clues to what's really going on, which is grieving over and over. And then when I thought about it some more, I just thought, wow, this is so profound, and it's because the other thing that you could possibly say that the movie was about the 60s, right? And when I thought about the 60s, because with it being the 40th anniversary of 1968, a couple years ago, and I just thought, wow, the 60s were just loss after loss after loss. It was all about grief. People think it was about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but it was really all about grief.